All right, welcome back one and all. We're going to actually add our game controller, which is going to control the game logic. In other words, things like scoring, health, lives, the state of the game, like are we winning, losing, that kind of stuff. It's going to be an object that's going to be invisible, and we're going to drop it in the first room, and we're going to make sure it's persistent. What we want to do is we want it to track the score, health, and lives of our player throughout the game. And if our player dies or moves rooms, we want to make sure that this object persists throughout so it doesn't like lose that information. Now, you could add score, health, and lives to the player, but the problem is the moment that player moves rooms, you delete it or whatever, then you lose that information. Now, so we're just going to create this object, and I'm just going to call it game controller. And I'm not going to add any kind of sprite, but I am going to check persistent. And what that means is it persists between rooms. We put it in the first room, and it will exist throughout the rest of the game. So before we do anything else, my recommendation is you go to the rooms. You're going to get frustrated if you don't do this. So this is a really important step. Believe me, I learned just a moment ago when I was teaching my other class. I forgot to actually put the game controller into the room. So I'm just going to drag it out. I'm going to put it in there. It doesn't matter where I put it. It's going to persist throughout the rooms. We're actually going to code it today. In fact, this is the first foray into coding in this game. So I'm going to go back to the game controller object, and I'm going to hide everything else. So make sure you put it in your room, and we're going to add several events. The first thing we want to do is initialize the game. So we're going to add a create event. And as you may recall, I've said this before, I'll say it again, the create event is triggered the first time an object appears in a room. And so this is the other reason why it has to be persistent, because we want this to happen only once during the entire game. So we use create. Now we're going to also add execute code. It's listed under common, or at least it was. There it is. It's the one that's the red one with the circle. It's a little angle bracket and an underscore. And I'm just going to actually click that, get rid of that. And let's do a couple things here just to sort of put this in its place. I'm going to double click here. Just so you know, we are in the game object. The event is create. And we're just going to initialize game variables. Okay. And we're going to do this for our player. This is a one-player game, but if you want to make multiple players, then what you may want to do is call each variable something like P1 score, for example. I'm just going to call it P score for player score equals 0, because we begin the game with no score at all. And we're going to do the same thing for health and lives, but health is going to be a little different, right? So health is going to be set to 100, and it's going to work like a percentage. This is 100% health. I'm feeling 100% today. And then we're going to add our lives, and we're going to set them to 3, but maybe you want to do 5. Maybe you want to be cruel and give only one life to live. Sounds like a soap opera or something. All right, so there we go. We've initialized our game variables, and there's one other thing we're going to need to do. We're going to need to set the location to the upper left corner of the screen. Now, if you are new to coding, you might be going, what is this new devilry he's doing here? He's writing all this information like this program can read English. It can't. It can read Game Maker language. That's a language it understands. But this here are comments, in case you didn't know. And comments are notes for me, the coder, you, the viewer, and anyone else who works on this game, because it's a good idea to sort of indicate what it is you're doing, maybe even the why of what you're doing from time to time. So a well-placed comment can really make your game a lot easier to work with. So now that we know what we're going to do, I'm going to give you some code, and then I'm going to talk about it. So we're going to set the X position, that's its horizontal position. So anytime you refer to X, it's referring to the X of the object that you're adding. So in this case, it's the X of the game controller. And if you're in another object, you could actually target the game controller's X by writing game controller.x. So it's kind of cool. And now it has to do with the viewport. View export. Now the view export. Remember we set the view on the room, and the view export is going to be basically the screen itself, and it's the X position. And now, so we're going to set the X in relationship to the X position of the viewport. And as you may recall, 0 is the left-hand side. And so now, in our case, we're using a viewport of 0, but that could change. And I like to do things such as use variables whenever possible. So this variable called view current means whatever the current view happens to be. And view underscore export is referring to the camera. And if I set it at this, it would be 0. But let's add a few numbers to it. Let's add maybe 25, like so. Let's do the same thing for Y. And remember, the Y is the up and down position. Actually, you know what? I'm thinking that if we're going to be setting the X and the Y, and we're going to be setting numbers, remember the grid is a 32 by 32 grid. Let's actually tap into that and try it 32. And we're going to do the same thing here. It's view current. Notice how I start to type it out, and there we go. And we're going to put plus 32 as well. Okay, and there we have it. You might want to pause and make sure you got it coded this way as well. All right, we've got everything set up in our initialization when the room gets created. By the way, the fact that this is persistent means that score, health, and lives only gets set once when we begin our game. If we did not make it persistent and we dropped it into every room, every time we went into a new room, it would reset score, health, and lives. Bad idea. Okay? And then we only need to set the X and Y position of our controller once, because even though the camera follows us around, the viewport is not the camera that moves, it's actually the window that shows us the game. So that's why we did it as view export. Yeah, you're welcome. All right, we're going to add our next event, which is step. This is where we're going to put a lot of logic in. You have step, begin step, end step. We're just going to use step. We're also going to execute code. Okay. And here's what we're going to do. We're going to slowly take health away. So we're going to make a little comment here. So we're going to write, let me show you a little code hint here. If you do a P and then an underscore, you write 2 characters. It'll show you everything that may incorporate those 2 characters together. And right away you can see there's P health. Oh, that's what we want. So I click it. I didn't have to type it. Now we're going to do a cool little thing here. We're going to do this thing called minus equals, and we're going to put 0.03. Now, what does this minus equals mean? That is the same as P health equals P health minus 0.03. So minus equals is saying the health equals health minus whatever this number is. So that's what that actually means. All right, well, now what happens now, the health is going away, so we need to deal with what happens when there's no more health. Okay, so we're going to do that. We're going to do a check. If we need to have something happen that we're not sure, okay, so in this case, every step is happening 30 times a second. So we're always taking away health, and what could happen is at some point we might eat something and it might restore our health. And if that's the case, well, that's great. But at some case, we're going to have no more health. We need to deal with that. So we're going to check. And to check something, we always begin with if. And then we got to do parentheses. So we're going to put P health. And I'm going to put is less than or equal to 0. So what happens if our health is less than or equal to 0? Well, we have no more health. We just died. So guess what we need to do now? P lives, hit enter, minus equals 1. Now, not only are we going to take a life away because we lost our health, but let's restart our room. Now we're going to call a function. And it's room underscore pause, wait for it. Now check this out. we got these variables: room first, room height, room last, room persistent, room speed, room width. So we have these variables that represent different aspects of the room, and we're not going to do that. But we're going to do this room underscore restart. Room restart. Okay? So this is going to restart our room. Don't you love it when it just makes sense? And there's one more thing we want to do. We want to reset our health. Because if we don't do that, we're going to lose lives at the rate of 30 frames per second. Bad idea. Some of you laugh because you're like, actually, that sounds cool because then that's evil. Don't be evil. All right, now guess what we have to deal with? We have to deal with what happens if we have no more lives. So let's go ahead and do that. We're going to follow the same format. P lives is less than or equal to 0. By the way, you're probably looking at what are all these weird symbols and stuff. Well, okay, whenever you do a check, the thing you're checking for has to go inside of the parentheses, right? And you're just using comparison operators. This is either going to be true or it's going to be false. It either is going to be true that there's less than or equal to 0 lives, or it's not. If it's true, then anything in these curly brackets will be what happens. So at the beginning, health is 100. We take away 0.03. Health will still be above 0. So it's going to check, and health will be 99.97. And that is greater than 0. And it's not less than or equal to 0. So we skip all of this. So we don't lose a life, we don't restart the room, and we don't reset the health. But at some point, it's going to go to 0 or below 0. And at that point, we need to now take a life away, restart the room, and reset the health. Now, when lives are left less than or equal to 0, we're just going to do a game restart. Now, there's other things you may choose to do, but for now, I just want to get something in place. Later on, if you want to have like a high scores table, or maybe go to a room that says game over man, or whatever you want to say, you can do that later. But right here, this covers basically the main, this is really dealing with health and a little bit of lives. We're going to do other stuff with lives later, but for now, we got it good. This is a good time to pause the video, double check your code. Look at the colors too. The colors tell you a lot. Anything that's purple is a variable that you defined that's not part of GameMaker. So if you see something turn green, that's actually a green variable. That means it's a variable that's part of GameMaker. It's already built in. Literal values that are numbers are going to be red. And then this orange stuff would be things like keywords and stuff like that that's part of GameMaker language. And then functions are also orange. So if suddenly this looks purple, then that is not built in. It is not what you think it is. Okay, so anytime you try to write a function, you think it's the right one. If it's purple, it's not the right one unless you defined that function, which you would have to do in execute code. We're not at that level yet. So for now, call it good. We're ready to move on to our next and final event and then test it out. So before I go on to the next and final event, I do want to just kind of iterate or mention that step happens in the number of frames per second on your game, which I believe we set it to 30. If you didn't, I think default's 15. It's kind of a slow game rate, but 30 times a second, and it's going to do all of this. All right, and this is just for this one object. Every object that has step, it will do whatever you put in there. So I just want to let you know. Now, not only do we have the step event, but we want to draw our health bar. So we're going to use the draw event. Now, the draw event taps into when GameMaker is actually drawing stuff on the screen. So I don't know if you knew this, but whenever a video game is running, it does the step first, which is all the logic and the update of code and game state, which is what they call it, which is all the different variables and things that are happening. But then draw just draws everything on the screen where they need to be. So what we're going to do is we're going to use, and by the way, draw has a draw begin, draw end. There's even a pre-draw and a post-draw. We're going to use Draw GUI, and what Draw GUI does is it draws whatever you tell it to and it draws it above, in front of anything in the room. So this ensures that what we're going to draw happens in the room. And because we're coding like there's no tomorrow, we're going to do another execute code. Okay. So what we want to do is we want to draw the health bar. Okay. And so it is a function, draw underscore, wait for it. Look at all the things you can draw. You can draw a lot of stuff, but we want to draw the health bar. Now look at this. Look at what shows up. Just look at that little window there. All the little X1, Y1, X2, Y. There's a ton of stuff in here. I'm going to hit enter, and it takes all that away. But one of the things, if you look at the bottom of execute code, let's see if we got it here. I don't have it on my screen. So let's do this. If you look down at the bottom, kind of faint there, I don't know if you can see it. It has a list of all of what they call parameters. See, these are all the pieces of information that are needed to draw the health bar. The first one is the X and the Y. So we're going to do X, Y, like that. That's pretty simple, right? Now, there's an X2 and Y2. So what this does is this determines the width of our health bar. So we're going to put an X plus 100 and a Y plus 32. Okay. Now we're on the amount. Okay, so this is kind of like what we're going to draw. This is the P underscore health. Okay. Remember how we set it to 100? We wanted to make it something that's easy for us to sort of manage. Now, the next part is the back color, and here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to hit enter. So we're going to go down to the next line, and let's just zoom in on the code here. Okay, here we go. Hopefully that's big enough. So the back call is the background color. And the background of our room is actually dark. I'm going to do C underscore. This is a variable that represents colors. Okay, so I'm going to use, I think I'm going to use gray, C underscore gray. And this is the background, right? Because it says back color. Min color is when it's the minimum amount. And I think this is right. I'm going to do C red. So as it gets smaller and smaller, it's going to turn red. But it's going to begin, when it's maximum, it's going to be actually lime. And in the direction, and I think it's just 0 here. And then show background, I'm going to put true. Show border, true. Like so. Oh, there we go. Get rid of that. Okay. So at this point, these are all the pieces of information you need to draw the health bar. Okay. So just to recap, the first X is the left-hand side of the health bar. The Y is the top of the health bar. The next X is going to be the width of it. The next Y is going to be the height of it. And we had to add it to the current X. Otherwise, as you may recall, we set the X to like 32 or whatever. I think we set Y to 32. So it's usually best to use variables whenever possible. And then we got the player health. And then these are the different colors. Background color, what happens when it's almost gone, what happens at the beginning. Let's space this out for making prettier looking code, like so. The 0 is the standard direction. I think that's what I wanted to do. It's either 0 or 1. Now let's go ahead and test it out. And the first thing we want to do is see if it works. Okay. And one thing you should know, if nothing works, the first thing you got to check is to make sure, did you put it in the room? And there we go. Okay, you see what's happening to the health bar? It's slowly going down, which means this is working right. Notice you can see the background color. It's gray. And it keeps going down. Now watch what happens to the green color as we start to go down. By the way, look, as I move through here, it stays in the same location. Notice that green is not as green as it used to be. All right. Anyway, I could, here, let's speed it up to show you. Let's go ahead and check this out. I'm going to go back to, let's go back a step. I'm going to go back to the game controller. And I want to show you a step. Watch what happens if I change this number from 0.03 to 0.3. Now watch the health bar. Check this out. It's going to move a lot faster. Look at that. See how it's turning color? Now watch what happens when it finally gets to the red. It should restart the room. And it restarted the room. Okay. And it's going down again. Look at that. Restarts the room again. Okay. We're going to deal with lives a little bit later, but I just wanted to show you that. Now I'm going to move this back to 0.03 because we need to kind of go through the maze a bit before we start panicking about our health, and we're going to intersperse food at various locations. So I just wanted to show you that. The other thing what we could do is I could show you lives. I could even show you a door to show that this works. So let's do a quick little bit of test. First thing, if it didn't work, do you have a game controller in the room? So it's going to be on the instances layer, and just make sure you got the game controller in there. There's mine. I put it near where I normally see the room, right? I put it right towards the beginning. Doesn't matter where you put it, it gets changed in your code. Then you might want to go through and double check all the values on create. So you might want to pause the video, take a look, make sure you have the same values. I'm going to go hide this. Oh yeah, I made that full screen. You can go back to game controller, just close create. This is step. This is the code for the step event. This is where we're checking. We're taking health away. We're checking health, checking lives. Draw GUI is where we're drawing the health bar. So in our next tutorial, I'll cover showing lives, and we're going to do it as little graphics that represent each of the lives. And we're going to test out the health bar a little bit better, and maybe we'll add some pickup items that can restore some of our health and some items that can give us some more score. So stay tuned for more. Thanks for watching.